Hello and welcome to this video. I am outside, as you can see, the Jellyman's Heritage Arts Charity, where I have my studio, and just over there is a forest, an English forest, and I want to take a wander into that forest and tell you a story which will involve the English aesthetic and how it affects popular music. But it's going to be a very strange story, so please settle in, get yourself a cup of tea. I will do the walking and sit back and see some lovely countryside, a lovely rich dense forest, and this forest is really not traversed by that many people, so it is a true English wood. And I will tell you a story of how the English aesthetic affected popular music. So, as we have discussed on this channel, all our lovely progressive rock bands can be seen as the fusion between American popular music forms, rhythm and blues, the blues, rock and roll, doo-wop, and a sort of English aesthetic that was grasped by bands in the 60s like the Beatles and then the Kinks and the Small Faces. And you get then a sort of fusion between almost like surrealist English comedy, music hall, and American popular music forms. With progressive rock, it's a little bit more intellectual, and we see a fusion with more European classical forms and the English and British literary tradition. But there's other ways it affects popular music as well. I want to tell you a story about the British band Chas and Dave. Now, Chas and Dave may not be known to our American viewers or viewers around the world, but here in the UK, Chas and Dave are household names, and they represent what you could call Cockney music. Music to have a knees up to, right? One of the most English bands I can think of. But the founder members of Chas and Dave, which would be Chas Hodgetts and Dave Peacock, did not emerge out of some sort of Cockney world of music hall and, roll out the barrel. They actually were a product of the popular music scene in London in the 1960s. They were working in the same environment as bands like Pink Floyd and Jethro Tull and Led Zeppelin. This is quite interesting for me because it shows that there was a dilemma with these British pop rock musicians. The blues especially, which had been brought into the UK via Skiffle. So a lot of the musicians in the 1960s who were working at that time were actually they had their start in Skiffle, which was a movement here in the UK which really explored American folk music, and in part of that it went back to a certain tradition that had emerged in America where the less privileged of society would build their own instruments. Somebody like Leadbelly, when he was a very young man, he had been able to see in his hometown some of the New Orleans bands where young people would literally, street urchins would create their own instruments. And the Skiffle movement that emerges in the UK really drew on the sort of American folk forms that had come through Leadbelly, that had become a great success in the 1940s. And one of the things this did was it enabled normal people who weren't classically trained, who would not have normally got access to music making. If you're in a skiffle band, you literally can get a washboard and you could get a broomstick, stick a piece of string on it and pull it back, and you had a double bass. For drums, people would get not a washboard, sorry. The washboard, which was a thing we used to use in the UK back in the old days to wash clothes with, they used that to make a scratchy percussion sound. It would be a tea chest that they would make their sounds out of. Now I'm walking through the wood here. I just want to show you something. I've reached a fork in the road. I've literally got the embodiment of the esoteric idea of the left-hand path and the right-hand path. You know, one road is going up to the sunlit uplands and the other one's going down into the darkness, and I'm going to go down into the darkness. Shall we carry on and get back into our story? So yes, a lot of musicians like Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, the Beatles all started in skiffle bands. It was like the punk of the 1950s. That interest in the blues then develops into in the 1960s into the sort of British blues bands like Cream, Eric Clapton, and then Jimi Hendrix, Fleetwood Mac, early Jethro Tull. And a lot of the psychedelic bands are coming out of a sort of exploratory way of playing the blues. This creates what I call rock music. I think this is so important for the development of rock music. But musicians at that time, they have a problem, because it's quite obvious that somebody from England singing about levees, you know, and other very American and also black American reference points doesn't quite make sense. And I think there was actually a quite a strong aesthetic problem that emerges in the 1960s, where bands go, how do we play rock music but bring in our own culture? I think the Beatles are one of the first to deal with this, but progressive rock is really, can be seen as a summation of that. Chas Hodgetts and Dave Peacock are working in that scene at the time, and they start to see it in a completely different way. They go back to the sort of Cockney songs that they'd grown up with as young kids. Before rock and roll, one of the main ways that the working class could experience music would be to have somebody that could play the piano, usually by ear, and they would, you know, gather around the piano and sing some songs together. And that tradition, often drawing on music hall, created a whole repertoire of working class songs. What Chas and Dave did that was unique is they combined that with the American rock and roll sound of Jerry Lee Lewis, that sort of piano based rock and roll. I've now come out of the forest. Oh, it's a beautiful day today. Do you want to have a look round? Have a look round. Look. It's a beautiful English day today. Absolutely wonderful. Have a good look. That's where we just come from over there, if you can see it. Let's head back. In fact, I'm going to stick this like this. I don't know whether you can see me and I don't know whether you can hear me, but I'll carry on, because this video has got two levels to it. One is about the intellectual effect of the English aesthetic, and one is the aesthetic effect. And I hope you are enjoying this little wander through this little English forest. There's nothing special about this forest. It's just a little English forest that's next to where I work. Anyway, so Chas and Dave combine the rock and roll of Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, and even going back to some of the sort of boogie-woogie pianists like Meade Lux Lewis, and they put that with a sort of working class Cockney subject matter, and lo and behold, they start having huge hit records. Now, here in the UK, a lot of those songs are seen as being, you know, sort of almost like novelty hits. If we think of something like Rabbit or Gertrude. But I also am a huge fan of Chas and Dave. And a song like Ain't No Pleasing You is an absolutely superb song, a brilliant piece of songwriting. I have a lot of respect for them. And again, we see that combination of the English aesthetic with American rhythm and blues forms being a winner. Now, what's interesting about Chas and Dave is that before they became Chas and Dave, as I said, they were working in a much more black American cultural music milieu here in the UK. And at some point in the mid-70s, they were pulled in to do a session for the great British songwriter Labi Siffre. Now, Labi Siffre is probably most famous for writing It Must Be Love, that was covered by Madness. But they brought Chaz and Dave in to play on a tune called I Got The, which is a slice of very American funk. And they needed a middle section, they needed a break. And so Chaz and Dave, on piano and guitar respectively, decided to come up with like this breakdown. Now, many years later, this breakdown was sampled for the debut single of Eminem. Yes, My Name Is by Eminem, which I looking on the internet this morning, has been voted in the top 10 most important or greatest singles or songs in music history, is based upon a riff which was created by Labi Siffre, and more to the point, Chaz and Dave. Right? What's so special about that? What's the quirk in that riff that has made it so all-powerful and actually then gone back and affected the whole history of popular music over in the US? When I started to do this video, I thought, shall I really, do a video on Chaz and Dave and my love for them? Because I knew, especially in America, like I said at the beginning of the video, people aren't going to know Chaz and Dave, but you do know them. Everybody knows them because of that riff. And that riff is a brilliant example. If you listen to the quirkiness of it, you can hear that hint of British music hall in it. That sort of almost like panto, like He's Behind You, which suited the sort of circus elements, the sort of shock of Eminem emerging as a white rapper and getting away with it, obviously because he was a brilliant rapper, but also because he came out, really ripping apart absolutely everything, which at the time, I think, when he was talking about impregnating Britney Spears and all this stuff, took away the focus of him being seen as a white rapper. It's very interesting, this is, that that English aesthetic acts in such a subtle way. Now, why? I think it's because people all over the world are actually quite attracted to the English aesthetic, and they're quite attracted to the delicate pastoral elements in it, which I think are fundamentally at the heart. The sort of quite quiet, esoteric mysticism of an English forest like this, which is subtle. It's not as threatening as the jungle, but it could well contain maybe a will-o'-the-wisp or a green man. And I think that element of playfulness is what is at the heart of the English aesthetic. It's what at the heart of the music of Chaz and Dave, and what undermines, the great rock bands like the Beatles, Jethro Tull, Gentle Giant, Pink Floyd, is a sense of whimsy. I have now returned to the car park at the Jellyman's Heritage Arts Charity, which has kindly helped me to come out of my garage and go into a place where I can do far more. And we do want to do far more here. It's an incredible place. I've just shown you one little aspect, which is that beautiful forest, and I'll be showing you more as time goes on. But we want to create something in the heart of my town which injects creativity and freedom of expression and reaches people that have been ignored by the mainstream in all sorts of ways, in terms of the arts and music and beyond that as well. So if you would like to support what we're doing here, there's a link to the Jellyman's Heritage Arts Charity in the description of this video. Also, if you would like to like and subscribe this, and if you like me getting out and about, out in the open, in the sunshine every now and then put it in the comments if you appreciate this mad sort of stuff. God knows what this video will look like. I've just got it. I've got it on this mad stick. Look, just this mad stick. Right, you think I've got a selfie stick? I haven't. It's a bit of an old microphone stand that I've gaffer taped the camera onto. Anyway, if you like it, put a like on it. If you want to see more, subscribe. And if you want to support me doing all this madness, I have a Patreon link down below with a ton of extra content. And I also have a YouTube, PayPal tip jar. Thanks for watching the video. I will see you on the next one.